Victoria found that the decision to classify the controversial film Ineba, The Wound, as X-18 sex, language, nudity, violence and prejudice. Now, this must be set aside as it is not hardcore pornography. Judge Joseph Railinga found that the Film and Publications Appeals Tribunal flagrantly disregarded the rules of the PAGA, which is an act of parliament that state both parties must have a fair opportunity to make representations to a tribunal. So to talk more about the judgment, we are joined from our Pretoria studios by Sandile Nene. He's the acting CEO of the Film and Publication Board. Sandile, thank you very much for joining us. Good to have you on Morning Live.
Good morning, Leanne, and thanks for having us.
Yeah. So let's start off by getting your reaction to the ruling that was announced yesterday.
Well, basically, in terms of the ruling, the judgment, as we've correctly put it, it set aside the decision of the appeals tribunal. And it gave, obviously, it now gives clarity in terms of where the decision is. But I think the judge also further went on to say, if the cultural rights were considered, there are still scenes in the movie that are harmful, that are disturbing to 16-year-olds in terms of what is contained there.
So basically what it is now is what it is now is that they've actually gone and brought it back down to 16, a rating of 16, sex, language and nudity. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I think we need to also state the fact that in terms of the FPB, and our role and our mandates, which comes from the legislation, we regulate the creation, the production and the distribution of films, certain publications and games, and then we rate. So any content that is produced is then sent to ourselves for us to classify and offer consumer advice, because at the heart of it, Leanne, is that we need to protect children from exposure to harmful content. So in the case of Ineba, if we can just give a bit of a background, the FPB had classified the Ineba to 16 LS, and this was now last year in July. And earlier this year, what we then had was we had an appeal which was lodged by the Boy and Men Foundation together with Contralesa. Remember, in terms of our legislation, because we would have classified that movie, when you lodge an appeal, you appeal to a different structure, which is an appeals tribunal. That's the structure that had overturned the decision, the original decision, which had been given by the Film and Publication Board.
I want to get back to one of your comments.
But one of the things that...
Yeah, okay, let's just get back to a comment that you did make here, where you say harmful content. In terms of Ineba, where does in the Film and Publication Board, not your opinion, the Film and Publication Board's opinion, where does the harmful content come into this? How do we define that in terms of this particular movie?
Yes, in terms of this particular movie, we and any other movie, Leanne, we do our work and we are guided by our classification guidelines. These are classification guidelines that are consulted by all South Africans in all provinces, where, for instance, the values and norms of what we want to see in our content is given to us as the board by members of society. So in the movie, we do have, and I'm sure you must have seen when you go and watch movies in cinema or even in the DVD format, where we would have offered a classification decision in form of a rating, for instance, a PG. We do have our classifiers who are trained, some of them are child psychologists. They would look at the movie guided by our classification guidelines.
Yeah.
So there are certain classifiable elements that we look at. However, with the in this particular movie, we must admit as the board, and this is something that we are looking at because we are also evaluating and looking at what the judgment had said around the fact that there is no provision in our current legislation around the classifiable element on content that is offensive to culture or content that has some cultural elements.
Yeah.
So we are now
I think that's what I was looking. That's what I was looking for from you, because I think at the root of all of this, it was more of a conversation about protecting people's cultural rights than anything else. Because, you know, on a personal note, I have seen the film, and you know, when I did watch it, I actually watched it with one eye open, waiting for this so-called hard pornography that I was about to be watching, and it never ever surfaced. I mean, I didn't understand how a film like this could be classified as hardcore pornography. So I think that for me personally, I didn't see it. However, when you talk about the sensitivity with regard to content on a cultural aspect, I imagine this is where you're going to learn your lesson going forward. And perhaps it's the way it's handed down, the judgment, the ratings of movies. Maybe that's something you've learned out of this. Perhaps you can elaborate more on that.
Yes, I think that's a learning curve for us because one, currently, as I've indicated, it's not covered by our law.
Yeah.
Neither is it covered by our classification guidelines. From the 20th of July, we are launching our classification guidelines, and we are starting a conversation around the role of culture in the creative industry and placing it within the context of a classification regime, because that's what has been missing. When we started having consultations, one of the things that we are picking up from communities, Leanne, is that they are saying, have a cultural or a classifiable element around culture, because we did not have, and we admit that. Secondly, our communities are also saying, have a classifiable element within the context of what is taking place in South Africa. In terms of the gender-based violence, they are saying we are not satisfied with a classifiable element which is V, which would have rated the movie, any movie which would have rated as a V. But if you look at the context, if you look at some of the scenes in the movie, you can actually pick up that those are gender-based violence. So we are continuing the discussion. We are urging all South Africans to attend all our classification guideline workshops. They must also make sure that they give us input, whether it's written and on oral, so that the classification guideline, as informed by our legislation and by our constitution, is informed by what communities want to see. For all of us, I'm sure, in terms of the board, as led by the CEO, council as led by the chairperson of the council, as well as the appeals tribunal led by the chairperson of the appeals tribunal. This for us is the learning curve. Inxeba has become a learning curve because it was able to give us certain things that were not covered in the legislation.
So are you contending, sorry, Sandile, sorry, in the interest of time, I have to interrupt you because we have run out of time, but I just need to get two things out of you quickly, and I mean quickly. Do you agree that you were at fault, that this was, that the producers of this film, in fighting this battle going forward, that the rating given was wrong? From you, from the Film Publication Board?
From the Film and Publication Board, we had classified the movie 16SL.
Yes.
And that's if you look at the judgment came back to where we had classified.
Indeed, but the appeals tribunal, wanting to classify it as hardcore porn.
Well, yes, I think the challenge, Leanne, is in terms of our legislation because they're an independent structure. I can't speak on their behalf. I know that they will be releasing a media statement on Monday, clarifying their position. But from the side of the board, we were satisfied with the classification decision.
Excellent. So no appeal coming that you know of for yesterday's ruling?
Well, like I said, we are all studying the judgment. At this stage, we are unable to comment further.
Okay, let's leave it there. Sandile, thank you very much for talking to us. Sandile Nene is the acting CEO of the Film and Publication Board. So it may see more courts, this particular film. It's a very controversial film. Well, it's something that some people have seen and others have avoided completely. In fact, at one stage you couldn't even watch it. You couldn't find a copy of it to watch. But Inxeba now, The Wound, its ratings have been brought back down to 16, and that's what the courts have ruled, but we'll see if it does go further in the courts. Let's take a break.